or it's going to come. It's going to happen. And I do believe, based upon things that are still yet to come, according to Revelation, that we all will suffer. All of us will. If you name the name of Christ, you will suffer for it. And beloved, if you go out boldly and you're not afraid of anyone and you're willing in love and compassion to reach a lost generation and to preach the truth to them, you're going to suffer for that. You will suffer. Now, you can bring the persecution on yourself by how you deliver it. You can go out there with harsh tones and harsh language, and you can go out there and beat them up with it. Yeah, that'll bring persecution. No one will want to hear you. No one will want to be around you. Or you could go out there in compassion and love, and you can plead with people. You wouldn't go to someone that you knew that was going to drive down a certain road and knew that if they went down that road there was a certain destruction, a certain death for them. You wouldn't be mad at them and shouting names at them and doing things like that. No, you'd be pleading with them. You would plead them not to go. I remember that time in my life when I was 16 years old, about 3 years before God saved me, and I was really bad. I was drunk. I had been taking pills that just really made it worse. And I got in my car and I went to take off. My mom stopped me. And my mom didn't want me to go. She was trying to plead with me to not go. I'd already been in the car. I was already in the car, already had the car going, so it wasn't like she could run in there and grab the keys from me or something like that. I took off. You know what met me about 5 miles away? I flipped the car. I flipped it. I walked away from it, but I could also have been hurt, or I could have hurt someone else. And I just think about that just now, and I think about the pleading. Think about that with the gospel. I mean, that was a physical situation, yeah, and I was lost. If I'd have died right then, I'd be in hell. Think about the pleading for someone in that manner for the gospel. You know, I have something that's really a burden in my heart I really want to share with you. I love you. I care about you. And you share the truth with them. And you're kind and you're gentle. You can be kind and gentle when you share about the bad things of the gospel, the judgment that is to come, can't you? Can't you plead with them with that? Yeah. You sure can. Well, listen, if we're not to be alarmed or surprised by the opponents, and that's actually to be a proof or a sign to us and a comfort to us of our salvation, because number one, you know, you're not going to go through some of this stuff if you truly haven't been born again. You know what I mean? If you truly are lost and you're being persecuted for a gospel that you haven't embraced, you're going to pull a Judas. You're going to betray Christ. You're going to have a price in which you could be bought out. So when you get to verse 29, he wants them not to be terrified or surprised by their suffering. Because look at what it says. For to you it has been granted for Christ's sake not only to believe in Him, but also to suffer for His sake, experiencing the same conflict which you saw in me, and now here is in me. You're not to be terrified. You're not to be surprised by the suffering for the gospel. Again, this is persecution for the gospel. This is not some personal sin that you've committed. In fact, hold your place right there and go with me to 1 Peter. Go to 1 Peter. Peter says in verse 19 of chapter 2. All right, let's back up to verse 18. Servants, be submissive to your masters with all respect, not only to those who are good and gentle, but also to those who are unreasonable. All right? Think of this as your employer. When you come to your employer, be submissive to him. You go to work tomorrow, you're to be submissive to your employer, even if he's good and gentle or if he's harsh. Verse 19, for this finds favor if for the sake of conscience toward God a person bears up under sorrows when suffering unjustly. You're going through something hard at work because your boss is treating you unjustly. You take it patiently. You're not giving him some lip. You're not fighting back. You're not becoming a problem for him at the job to where he has to threaten to fire you. You take it patiently. You bear it up, he says. This finds favor with God when you respond like that. What is the number one thing we do when we feel threatened, when someone attacks us, when someone says something about you, whether it's true or not, what's the first thing we do? What do we throw up? A defense. We throw up a defense. All of us do that. And he says here, if you don't do that, that's actually going to find favor with God. Because look at what he says in verse 20. For what credit is there if when you sin and you're harshly treated, you endure that with patience? But if when you do what is right and you suffer for it and you patiently endure it, that finds favor with God. In other words, you should suffer for your sin. But when you do something right and you're suffering for it and you're patient, that's going to find favor with God. You didn't deserve that judgment. You didn't deserve that treatment. For if you have been called for this purpose, he says in verse 21, since Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example for you to follow in his steps, who committed no sin, nor was any deceit found in his mouth. And while being reviled, he did not revile in return. While suffering, he uttered no threats, but he kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. Jesus didn't defend himself. How about when Peter pulls out the sword out of the sheath and he cuts off the ear of one of the servants of the high priest? And Jesus tells him to put your sword back in your sheath. Do you not know that any moment I could call 12 legions of angels? You know how many Roman soldiers made up one legion? 6,000 made up one Roman legion. He was saying that he could have called 72,000 angels just like that to come to his aid. But he gave that up. He gave it up. What do you and I want to do? We want to call down divine curses, right? We want to call down heaven on somebody because of the way we're being treated. We need the attitude that David had. When there was a man that was throwing rocks at him and kicking up dirt and calling him names, and one of his men said, "You want me to go over there and cut his head off?" Could you just imagine that? You got a friend with you and somebody's doing it, and he goes, "Hey, you want me to go over there and cut his head off?" Well, the one thing we need to understand, by law, he could do that because the guy was violating the law of God against the king. And David said, "Leave him alone. God is doing this." Wow. I mean, wow. God is doing this. Think about that when you feel like you've been treated unjustly. Look at the bigger picture. What is God doing in you? What's he doing in your life? That's what I felt all week. God's doing something. And I know what he's doing now. And I thank him for it. I'm certainly not thankful for the people involved, that are experiencing things at my behalf or had experienced things. So he says here, on one side, when you suffer for something that you've done, you deserve to be persecuted for that. On the other side, you're suffering for the sake of the gospel, for the gospel that you're preaching, then you need to not be surprised that you're suffering for it. Because of this, God has graciously granted that to you. Look at what he says, verse 29. For to you it has been graciously granted, for Christ's sake, not only to believe in him, but to suffer for his sake. The word, why I keep saying graciously granted, because that's what the word means. Charizo means to give, to render, or to grant graciously. We have been graciously granted salvation. You won't argue with that, will you? But we've also been graciously granted suffering.